My name is Bessel van der Kolk, and I would like to share with you some thoughts about how we can deal with the current corona catastrophe that's upon us. I have studied trauma and people's adaptation to trauma for several decades now, and I think we are in a pre-traumatic condition, namely the conditions for psychological trauma arrive. Of course, right now our primary concern is about people's physical safety and illness. The second issue is the economy and what it's going to do for the economy. And the third big issue is the psychological toll that we're paying for being locked up and sequestered from each other. And so I'd like to just talk about a few things about what we have learned, how we can deal with the situation. So, preconditions for trauma. What sets people up for trauma? Number one is lack of predictability. We live with a sense of lack of predictability, and that means that we need to organize our lives in as predictable a way as we can. That means that our own lives need to be as predictable as we can make it. That means that we make schedules for ourselves. It means that we set up an order of the day where we get up at a certain time, we go to bed at a certain time, we arrange to be in frequent contact with people who we care for via the telephone or the internet. We plan certain activities at certain times, and we live a life where we can anticipate and predict at least our own lives. Things like having a yoga practice and saying every morning at 9 o'clock, I'll sign up to some yoga practice and I'll do something. Every day at 12:30, I'll make lunch and possibly, if I'm by myself, have lunch while talking to a friend who's also having lunch, or I have lunch with my family or my kids when they're here. And then we do the following thing in the afternoon. And by 5 o'clock in the afternoon, we watch an old rerun of Mr. Rogers, or we may watch the news to see what's happening out there, but stay low on web input, and then make another meal and plan your evening. So plan your day, plan your week to overcome the sense of unpredictability that we live with. The second piece that makes something traumatic is when you cannot do anything, when your body is paralyzed. And so it becomes very important that we actually activate our bodies and do things with our bodies right now, even though we may be locked up and we may not be able to go outside. I'll get back into that also. The third issue of trauma is loss of connection. Trauma always involves a sense of not being seen, not being paid attention to, not being heard. And it's terribly important for us to be in touch with people, to make a regular contact with our families, our classmates, our professional colleagues, our neighbors, etc., etc. We'll talk about that in detail also. Next one is the natural response to feeling helpless is to numb yourself out and to space out. Once you numb yourself out, you lose a sense of agency, and we need to do something to help ourselves to not be numbed out. Next thing is that when you get traumatized, you feel like this will last forever, that there is no end in time, and that we need to set up a system in ourselves of activating our sense of sequences in time, which I'll talk about. Next issue is the issue of safety. We need to feel safe. Of course, we aren't safe in a larger scale because there's terrible things happening in the world. And yet for ourselves, it's critical that we set up safe situations for ourselves. And I'll talk about how to optimally do that with what we know right now. As I said before, there is a lot to learn. At this point, there are no experts in this field. We have not dealt with a pandemic for a long time. The issue of a pandemic raises different issues for us. For example, For me, the pandemic is highly meaningful because my own family was devastated by the flu epidemic of 1918. And that's very much part of my genetic history of how my family was destroyed by the pandemic. Lots of people died. My grandfather got Parkinsonism, was unable to work. And my family, my mother's side of the family was really degraded into a sense of extreme helplessness and poverty, which is my own legacy. Maybe some of you have a legacy of tuberculosis in your family, or people having been sequestered, or people having been locked up. All these things keep coming back and help us to organize how we think about these things, and also make us disorganized in response to all of this. Finally, we have an identity. We are a certain person. It's very important for us to hold on to our identity and to do things and to be involved in things that affirm who we are. And so we'll go over every one of these issues today. First issue is predictability. We need to create a sense of prediction in our lives, create a schedule, think about what you look forward to. For example, today I made a date to have cocktails with a close friend of mine at 5 o'clock on Saturday afternoon. Today is Thursday. I have plans to go for a long distance hike, creating distances with people on Sunday. I have plans for next Monday. And I hope very much that you will create a schedule for yourself of putting yourself in a time frame where you can look forward to contacts, activities over time, even as you are locked up. So you need to make a calendar of connections and activities. You may want to write it down. Write down on a piece of paper what you're going to be doing and what you look forward to, and share it with the people around you. The next issue of trauma is immobility. When you're traumatized, you are in a position that there is nothing you can do to change the situation. You lose your physical sense of agency. And this is a very much a bodily sense. The normal reaction to a stressful event is to get moving and to activate your fight-flight reaction, to get away from things, to move, to do something, to get on a plane, to get in a car, and to do something. We cannot do that right now. So the natural response of fight and flight is not available to us. At least flight is not available, but flight still is available. And that's something I'd like to talk about, because this is a time that we are at great risk of getting into very destructive behaviors with the people around us, to lose our temper, to become angry, and to commit potentially violent acts. And one of the gravest concerns I have, and there's some data coming in from China, Spain, and France already, that the issue of domestic violence, it has sharply increased in the past few weeks. And I will talk about that in this webcast and the subsequent ones, is how we can better deal with family violence, etc., etc. But what happens at a time like this is that our bodies will get activated to do something, to create things and do something, and we need to use that energy to actually use our bodies to do things. And so how do we can do that? And this is on my website. You can look at these slides at my website, besselvanderkolk.com. We can use our stress hormones to cook meals together, to build things in your basement of your house, to gather food together, to do some work around the house. Shoveling snow is no longer relevant right now, but to take care of things. So it's very important to act and to do and to make plans to be able to do things. We need to learn to control ourselves. We need to, very much a focus right now is on self-regulation. what we have learned over time is that things like yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong are very helpful. These methods aren't for everybody, but if you have any capacity, any inclination to learn yoga or to re-access yoga, there are numerous sites in every community right now that offer free yoga classes. I'm actually going to, on my website, besselvanderkolk.com, I will post some free websites that I can highly recommend, but get a regular yoga practice to calm down your body, to calm down your relationship to yourself, and to really literally get a grip on your own physiological reactions. If you don't do that, the danger that you may rely on drugs and alcohol becomes very great. Breathing exercises, I'll post some breathing exercises on my website also, where you can, and there's, of course, you can follow, you can look it up on the website, on the web, how many people actually can teach you how to breathe right now correctly. I have a video also on that, that is on my website also, on learning how to breathe calmly, very deeply, to really take 6 breaths in, hold your breath, breathe out very slowly, hold your breath as you breathe out, and really focus on the out breath so you calm down your whole breathing system, and with that your whole physiological system as well. So you can look these things up on my website. Next thing is human connections. I think this time is very hard for many people. To be locked up by yourself in an apartment is completely unnatural unless you already have a lot of trouble with other human beings. The normal thing for people is to hang out with other people, to talk with other people, to embrace other people, to make love with other people. So a normal thing is to be intensely engaged with each other. So our social distancing right now is going to be very hard for many of us. And it's going to be much easier for people who actually are in a loving relationship and who are home with somebody they love, with their own kids, with their own dogs. Pets can be very helpful also. But we don't really feel like we are real people without connection with each other. So this is the time to really shore up your connections and to be in sync with people. In other settings, I've talked about the need for rhythms together, the power of voices and faces. So we need to make visual connection with people. You can try it out for yourself. Call somebody you love, call your kids, call your parents, call an old friend, and look at each other over FaceTime or Zoom or Skype or Go Meeting or any of these social things where you can really look each other in the face and talk to each other and get comfort from being seen and getting into a rhythm with other people. Because our primary mode of regulating ourselves is through our voices and our faces and the attunement between our voices and our faces with each other. So like when we cry, it's wonderful if somebody looks at us and say, I'm sorry you're so upset. When you're happy, you can share your happiness with somebody else. That makes you feel alive. When you make some beautiful piece of food, showing it to your friends and say, look what I made, and they share your delight. That's very much part of being alive, and our social connections are very important. We are very fortunate compared with your and my family in the pandemic back in 1918, when people didn't have telephones, people didn't have social networks, people didn't have FaceTime, any of these things. So people were by themselves with devastating consequences. Today, we can make these connections, and these connections can keep us alive and keep us having a sense of vitality in our bodies. And so a large part of our work right now, of what we do, is to keep our rhythms going with other people. Family meals are of the essence. Eat together, talk to each other, play games. Think about any game that you can think of. If you go on my website, not on my website, my Facebook site, The Body Keeps a Score, I've posted quite a few articles about all the games that you can play as adults and as children. But play your games. Do your interactions. Play your Boggle and your Scrabble and your Monopoly and whatever games are appropriate for you and other people. Get out your dress-up clothes and make a play, walk through the house, be silly. Storytelling, there are storytelling sites on the internet, and you can download those. I'll post those also on my website. Storytelling, very important. Music making, make music with other people. Most of you by now have seen the websites from Italy and Spain, where whole neighborhoods are singing together, much to my delight. My neighborhood in Boston also is having every night at 7 o'clock, people are singing together. Singing together, making music is a very physiological way of being connected with other people. Next thing is numbing out. It is very natural when you're overwhelmed by terrible things and you are assaulted by the news and the misinformation that you're getting from the powers that are. It is very scary, and it is easy to numb yourself by endless watching of TV or so it's numbing yourself out with drugs or alcohol. And that's really a very great dangerous issue that we need to pay attention to. And so we need to vitalize our bodies to be in sync with each other and to feel alive. The way to feel alive is via your body. You need to do things to move, to breathe, to make music, to do things, to play the flute, to drum, to do something to make your body have a sense of agency is terribly important. Passivity is a very terrible thing. And so in order to feel alive, the first thing you need to do is to notice yourself, to see what's going on inside of you. And at 12:30 on my website, besselvanderkolk.com, Alicia Sky will lead us into an exercise of how to get in touch with yourself and how to notice yourself and to develop a friendly relationship with yourself. And we will have another webcast on that issue. As long as you cannot notice yourself, you will have only reactions. As long as you don't know what's going on with you and what effect the world has on you, you tend to react to all kinds of things like a chicken with their head cut off, and you'll just automatically react to people in oftentimes a very unpleasant, violent, or scared way. And so it's very important to actually be in touch with yourself. Once you're able to observe what's going on inside of you, you can start making choices. And that's what the next webcast on our site is going to be around. What oftentimes is useful is to have somebody else who notices you, who talks with you. And so there's a number of websites where you can actually engage with people in a yoga class. You can check in with people to see each other, what's going on with you. And certainly that's what friendships are about also, to really have people, to share with people, this is what's going on with me. This is what I'm feeling. That's what's happening in my body. This is what helps me. And really share that with people around yourself and find words for your internal experience and say, right now I'm really freaked out. But when I needed to cook a meal for my family, I started to feel better. Or when my old college friend called me up and we talked together, I felt calm again. So really notice what makes you feel alive and better, and really notice when you start spacing out, and to be sure that you start activating your body and your relationship to yourself to feel alive right now. The issue of meditation is very important. Meditation can be profoundly helpful to really get in touch with yourself, to calm yourself down, to regulate yourself. There are very good websites by Jon Kabat-Zinn and by Tara Brach who can lead you in meditation. There's probably many other people. I again will collect these resources and post them on my website. And so really learn to meditate and to be calm. But what you will notice is that meditation and mindfulness isn't always easy, because when you become still, you may notice some very upset and angry parts of yourself. And learning to tolerate those feelings becomes very important. And it becomes very important to notice what the different aspects you have and to allow yourself to know what comes up. Again, in that regard, it's very helpful to be with other people and to notice, to share with other people what you're experiencing. The next issue is a very big issue right now in our current climate, and that is the sense of not having a future. A core trauma state is a sense of timelessness. So it's very important to get a sense of time going. And again, anticipating what's going to happen, because when you're traumatized, you feel like this will last forever. So it's very important to get an internal sense of time. When you meditate, you'll notice that certain stuff comes up. And you may actually feel very uncomfortable sensations. Try to just tolerate the sensations and see what happens if you feel some stiffness, some pain, some uncomfortable emotion, to notice what happens if you take a deep breath. But notice what happens when you shift your body. That's something that we will pay attention to in the webcast that follows this one on my website, where Alicia Sky will help us go through this internal noticing of our own bodies. It's very important for us to notice that we are living organisms, that if we sit still like this and we breathe, that our bodies continuously change, that our bodies have different sensations that come up, different thoughts that come up. But if we keep focusing on our breath, keep focusing on the way that our body sits, we can just notice the different emotions, the different feelings, the different sensations that come up, and just notice them, that everything passes, and that we can move very carefully from moment to moment of self-awareness and get a sense of that I'm a living organism with a sense of time, and I notice how things become different as time goes on. The light through the window changes, my internal sensations changes, the sounds changes, your breath changes, etc., etc. Very important, get this internal sense of safety. Lastly, the big issue with trauma is feeling safe. And that is a very important issue, both when you're living by yourself and when you're living with other people. And it's very important for all of us to identify what makes us feel safe. Is it listening to Simon and Garfunkel? Or is it listening to some other music? Or is it listening to Bach toccatas? Or is it whatever music makes you feel calm? The most important element of feeling safe is touch. So those of us who are lucky enough to live with people who we love, we can touch. This is the time to cuddle. This is the time to hold each other. The time to make each other feel safe and to really feel the pleasure of human touch. If you're by yourself, that's much harder. And again, the webcast that will be next on my website with Alicia Sky will very much focus on how you can get a sense of touch inside of your body, even if it's only you who is able to make yourself feel safe. To my mind, this is one of the most important things we can do for ourselves right now, is to establish that internal sense of feeling safe with ourselves and to touch ourselves very deeply. But not only do we need touch in other people, we also need privacy. Certainly teenagers need privacy. Everybody needs a space that is their space. And so even if you live in a small apartment with a partner who you're likely to, from time to time, to drive each other crazy, you need to make an arrangement that when I sit in that chair over there, that's my space. And that's when you don't talk to me, and that's when you don't ask me to do things. That is where I can retreat to my own private space. If you're lucky to have more than one room in your house, really make an arrangement that I can, when I withdraw to that room, you cannot talk to me and you cannot really bug me about anything. But we make a schedule about how we do these things. But it's very important to have a space where other people cannot get to you, where you feel okay. The most important thing when you have a trauma history, which of course many people do, is that you need to feel safe inside of your own body. And to my mind, the best way of feeling safe in your own body is to have a physical practice of yoga, tai chi, qigong, and go on the web and find out where you can find yoga, qigong, etc. lessons. And do take that webcast with Lisa Sky, who can also really help you to feel safer in your body. Lastly, this is a very dangerous time for families. It's very dangerous, very easy for people to blow up. We know already that in at least about a third of all households in America experience physical violence at various times. It's very important to really create that private space where you agree that this is not where you can come and I can be safe. This is a time that I'm very seriously concerned about family violence. And if you are not safe at home, you should call this hotline, 1-800-799-SAFE, or visit the website, thehotline.org, help, and you really should find a safe place for yourself because family violence is at great risk right now. So this is the end of this half-hour webcast. I hope to be back in the near future to really share with you what we are learning about how we can best take care of ourselves in these very difficult times. It will be announced on my website, besselvanderkolk.com, the other website, the Trauma Research Foundation, and also Bessie will send you a notice when the next webcast will be. Thank you very much for your attention, and I wish you the very best in creating a safe, joyful space for yourself and the people you love right now. All the best. Thank you very much.